Resurrection by Tolstoy. It's an 1899 novel that was right around the turn of the century. That was his last, I believe it was his last official novel. Everything, I think, after that, I think, was nonfiction, like essays and stuff like that. Kind of in the same style as, like, maybe Confessions and The Kingdom of God is Within You. And I didn't really know a lot about this coming into it. I guess the same could be said of a number of other novels. I kind of tend not to, I tend not to try to research too much of it going in. But yeah, the this concerns a man by the name of Dmitry Ivanovich Nekhlyudov. I think it's Nekhlyudov, and he is basically seeking for some kind of like uh, karmic kind of redemption for his past mistakes in life, and this a lot of this revolves around his a past kind of sin and regression that he committed way back in when about to a younger woman named uh, Katyusha, and it's basically this Katerina Maslova, who is, I believe, kind of distantly related through a goddaughter, and who is mistreated by pretty much everyone, and then he kind of partook in that and ended up kind of seducing her, and then ultimately she falls pregnant, and then is kind of kicked out, and then basically uh, the worst kind of horror, the most worst amalgam of events transpires after what he does to her, and it kind of kicks her to the curb and forgets about her. And then he's basically a nobleman too, an aristocratic. He in this world, much like Tolstoy himself. This is like pretty much semi kind of agreed to be semi autobiographical by many different critics because of Tolstoy's own struggle with reconciling his past and this. I believe there is a maid named Masha that he likewise seduced and uh, impregnated, and it kind of um, didn't really kind of he kind of pushed it in the past and kind of like, but then he was open about it and he finally confessed to it to one of his I believe to his wife, and basically also tried to kind of re come to terms with those past mistakes and to like fully like thrust himself into these new things of like getting rid of his like Tolstoy himself, like stepped out of the aristocracy, the comforting kind of world, very much like kind of like the Buddha. It's kind of the Buddhist kind of classic archetypal story, right? Because he's like he could be sustained in this self-sustained little bubble where nothing phases you, where you don't have to worry about the inclinations or the even the faintest hint about what's going on outside. Like kind of a Plato's cave analogy, and you're just seeing the only thing you're seeing is just kind of like shadows on the cave wall, and you're not fully. But once you kind of there's that moment of giving up, and then fully immersing yourself in that world that you so um, that it's almost like this symbolic kind of um, call to action in a sense, like of like giving up like the comfortable lie of what you've been inculcated and embedded with for so long, and just giving and fully embracing and just all of it, and for maybe something that's like like you're not there's no financial net where you are now, but it's like much more um and but yeah, this is what Nikliadov does. He ends up feeling awful about this, and he's very just disillusioned by his surroundings and all the just the total um, idle kind of chatter of his, and it shows like a lot. It's a pretty thick novel, and a good amount of it is like going through like the very kind of petty red tape kind of discussions, and kind of the exacting kind of, but ultimately just very empty minded convoluted machinations of like bureaucratic systems, and like how systemized Russia was at the time, or just like with all this kind of even post-Tsarist Russia. I mean, I'm not sure when this was released or when this was exactly when this was set, but I did get some House of the Dead by Dostoevsky kind of impressions by this as well, with being into the prison. Basically, Nekhlyudov is basically trying to um, when he's on that jury, he's like sends that ultimately sends Maslova to prison in Siberia. Classic kind of Russian kind of full circle kind of thing with that. A lot of exiles they were sent to Siberia, and varying degrees of punitive measures were sought out, and that was kind of the main um, kind of uh, sentence, was going to like commuted doing hard labor, or but she was innocent for that, and for basically poisoning a client. That's the thing. That's the main thing that they got her on, was like they accused her of putting arsenic, I think, in a drink for one of her um, clients, and basically she claims time and time again that she didn't know that. She thought it was just going to make him sleepy. The only thing she wanted to do was like kind of like give him kind of some kind of sleeping thing that would make him more prone to fall asleep, and but it kind of backfired, and kind of um I think it ended up killing the guy. So it was like it's definitely a very much a incidental kind of thing, and there's evidence to suggest that uh and blatantly even to kind of reveal that this whole thing was like an accident. But he like totally kind of like puts up a face, like kind of blinds, like willingly, Dimitri like completely ignores the justice of the situation. But like later on, this totally just like gnaws at him, and he goes back that he comes to realize that when after visiting Maslova in prison, and hears like the other people, like the endless stories of how just how many falsely accused people were in, just like in House of the Dead, just how many people were like very just like kind of petty things, or like with Dostoevsky literally just like spreading some like leaflets and stuff in the Petrovsky Circle, or just the sheer amount of people that were thrown in there for either completely falsely accused crimes they did not commit, or just very light crimes as well. And the same thing with like Solzhenitsyn, and it's like you kind of see echoes of this, but probably more, I'd say probably more, Solzhenitsyn kind of got it the worst end of it. I think he had to deal with other people that were fellow inmates, like a young lady that was thrown in there for accidentally just like uh, hitting a bust of Stalin, and that was like enough to kind of like put her in there for life. I think it was like really harsh punishments just to send a message. So this, I guess, even still, like there's like this is a very Tolstoyan kind of idea of like being uh like getting over this kind of your class system, like breaking the caste system in a sense of transcending that in a sense, in a spiritual realization of being like this. None of this means anything, like it's completely meaningless. So I'm just gonna you know um um but yeah, he just sees the amount of people that are just beaten and punished, and there's some of them like thrown into dungeons literally of the prison. um and there's like this huge latrine too, and there's like literally like this little boy that's like no more than maybe 12, I think, who's like sleeping in this in that in the sleeping in this all this human feces, I think, because of that latrine, because there's no other space for him. So, but these are all like this is maybe realism. It's in a sense it's kind of maybe a little bit hyper. It might be exaggerated a little bit, but I don't think it's um any more so like all that stuff that could very well be happening. But Tolstoy might have been picking out certain things that he saw in maybe in his own life, and or at least heard stories of. And but anyway, so yeah, so at the end he comes full circle. Nekhlyudov decides to sacrifice all his properties and his land, also his serfs, I think, or his and he gives them to his I think his the peasant people, and then they leaves it up to them to kind of like sort out amongst themselves about how they can deal with this his estate that he's selling off, or giving away, rather, and then he follows, and then he ends up reuniting with Katusha, and they and ultimately I think ends up marrying her. I'm sorry, I said ultimately like 15 times. Um, and yeah, so yeah, I think that's pretty much it. There's more to that. There's like all as always with great Russian novels. There's, like there's different avenues of like stories that are started, and like different, all these interwoven kind of stories about the prisoners that, and very long kind of discourses between like uh, moralistic, very like Pharisee esque kind of stark austerity of like how of the the prison system, and how the judges, and how like ruthless and cruel these judges could be, and like how, and Tolstoy really just trying to sell in, like pages. So just prepare for that. It might get a little bit kind of boring in that sense of like of him repeating those, but it's for a point. Like he's pointing out the hypocrisy in these kinds of ways of thinking, and that kind of grip people once you get into a kind of a holier than thou kind of thing um, of just kind of like thoughtlessly kind of just commuting, or like accusing people of things they didn't do, or and lumping them into the same kind of category as like anybody else just because they're peasants, and they anyway. But yeah, that's kind of the point of it, is that but anyway, so this actually was like one of his, I was kind of surprised to hear that this was one of Tolstoy's most famous works. I think like in Russia at the time, it actually outdid like Anna Karenina and War and Peace in as far as like sales for him. So yeah, but it was eagerly awaited for a lot of the Russians out, because they hadn't heard from Tolstoy, and hadn't got a work of fiction from him from like 20 something years. So yeah, it was definitely a prized, kind of cherished thing as when it finally came out. So but yeah, so I definitely recommend this novel. Um and that's all I have for the Resurrection, or I'm sorry, Resurrection by Tolstoy. Thanks for watching.